Hi everyone, and welcome to the first TBR video I will be making for Horror Mayhem. So again, this takes place throughout the month of May, and the goal is to just read horror, as much horror as you would like, as you can. Now, for those of you who do like, kind of like reading prompts, each week in Horror Mayhem has a particular theme. I particularly like the prompts, so I will be reading according to the themes. Now, I will be making a total of 4 of these videos, so this is the first one, and I will be talking to you about just all these books. A bunch of possibilities that I could choose. I have selected one book. I will let you know at the end of this video which out of all of the books I talk about today, which book I will be reading for this particular week. And I'll do this for all of the weeks. So again, this is week 1 of Horror Mayhem. And the theme for week 1 is supernatural beings or creatures or creatures. So I have a couple of physical books, and then I will go into the ebooks and I'll insert pictures here and things like that. So I'm just pulling up Goodreads so that I am ready. Okay. So let's go ahead and go with the physical books first, and I will tell you what book I will be reading at the end, if it's an ebook or a physical book or whatever the case. So again, supernatural beings or creatures. My mind immediately goes to vampires, and so one of the books that I have is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. My understanding is that she is known as the Vampire Queen, but I have never read anything by Anne Rice, so this is definitely a possibility. It does say there's a little circle here that says featuring an exclusive excerpt from Prince Lestat. Don't know who that is, but I guess I'll find out in the book if I read this, whenever it is. I've got a couple of vampire options as well, so let's just talk about this one first. All it says is, here are the confessions of a vampire. So this is like, my understanding is it's kind of like an interview with the vampire. It literally, like the title is, it's an interview of what the vampire's life has been like. So it says, here are the confessions of a vampire. Hypnotic, shocking, and chillingly erotic. Okay. This is a novel of mesmerizing beauty and astonishing force. A story of danger and flight, of love and loss, of suspense and resolution, and of extraordinary power of the senses. So, I mean, that's all it is, but I think the title is pretty much what it is about. Now, it looks like this is my understanding is that this is part of a series. Let's see. So the front just lists other books by Anne Rice. If you're interested, Anne Rice has also written erotica under A.N. I don't even know how to say the last name. Rocalioriru? I don't know. And let's see, under the name of Anne Rampling, there are 2 books. But under Anne Rice, there's a whole list of books. Let's see. What else can I tell you about this particular book? It just has quotes from Chicago Tribune, the Boston Globe, etc. And then this is, okay, so book 1 of the Vampire Chronicles. I don't know what the next one is. It was originally published in 1976. So Interview with the Vampire is an option. Okay. The next physical book I have, now, Dracula by Braum Stoker, I read a while ago, so that could be an option as well, if you're interested in that, but I did not want to reread it. I want to read new stuff at this point. So I found on a video that they mentioned that there is a sequel, and only the Stoker family can claim a book is the sequel, which is the case with Dracula the Undead. It does say it's the sequel to the original classic, and this is by Darce Stoker and Ian Holt. So the Stoker family has declared that this is actually the sequel to Dracula, so I am absolutely wanting to read this. But yeah, Dracula the Undead by Darce Stoker and Ian Holt. So this will be interesting, and I look forward to getting to this at some point. Okay. The next physical book, I'm just looking at my list. I have everything written down. Okay. The other creature that my mind goes to are zombies. So, I will be wanting to read at some point, as a possibility, Feedback by Mira Grant. Now, this particular one, all I can say is... Okay, so this is the 4th book in the Newsflesh series, and this one says, An America overcome by fear, a presidential race like no other. There are 2 sides to every story. So I think this is going to be it sounds like, so the first book, there's a presidential campaign, and you have, I am blanking on the characters' names. Does it say on the back? The Masons. There's a brother and sister. So they're following the presidential trail and things like that. So what has happened is in America, well, and basically throughout the world now, people don't get colds, they don't get cancer. I think there are some other sicknesses that they can get, but basically there's this super virus, which when people die, if they're over a certain weight threshold, they can amplify into a flesh-eating zombie. So that can definitely be scary. These are classified as horror, but it's also like a horror science fiction, maybe dystopian-esque, but they are classified under horror on Goodreads. So this one's the 4th book in the series, and so the first book follows the campaign, but it's from the perspective of the Masons and what they call the Newsies and this organization that they run, and they are reporting on this zombie outbreak as well as the presidential election. So I think this is taking it from another perspective. Whose perspective, I do not know. So I think that this will be interesting. It says, we had cured cancer, we had beaten the common cold, but in doing so we unleashed something horrifying and unstoppable. The infection spread, leaving those afflicted with a single uncontrollable impulse: feed. So, and this is feedback. Again, it's a different perspective from the first book. So this is definitely a possibility as well. Right now, I am currently reading the omnibus. Let me grab it. The omnibus, which this one, Rise, is a collection of novellas and short stories within this world. I have completed the 3rd book in this series. The first novella in this is like the prequel, kind of, so it takes place before the first book. And then everything else in this, I think, takes place after the 3rd book, at least so far. But if this is, so this is also a possibility. I do want to finish this month, so definitely before Horror Mayhem. Now, I will say, so I'm over halfway. I will say so far in one of the stories that I have read, there is a definite trigger warning for death of children, like kindergarten age or younger or 1st grade. And one of them is actually an adult. It's, and I'm not going to tell you which story it is, but basically this kid is so injured that in order to protect the other children, you have to sacrifice the one. So the adult has to kill that child in order to save a group of other children. And that means, and this is disturbing, and it did disturb me, so definite warning for this, but the adult had to snap the neck of this child. And I don't know if the child was in kindergarten or 1st grade, but definite warning for that. That was disturbing. That was very disturbing. But yeah, so this is definitely a possibility as well. But this is the other possibility I'm focusing on. Okay, moving on back to right now, vampires. So the other physical book that I have is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I know that some people also say that this is fantasy, which could very well be the case. As there are other vampire books that are classified as fantasy, like Twilight, but this one on Goodreads does have the tag of horror. as well as fantasy, so probably a fantastical horror. And this is book 1. So let's see, this one says, it has been 27 long years since the last sunrise. For nearly 3 decades, vampires have waged war against humanity, building their entire empire, their eternal empire, even as they tear down our own. Now only a few tiny sparks of light endure in a sea of darkness. Gabriel de Leon is a silver saint, a member of a holy brotherhood dedicated to defending realm and church from the creatures of the night. But even the Silver Order could not stem the tide once daylight failed us, and now only Gabriel remains. So, there is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I actually did not think that this one would qualify for Horror Mayhem, but it does have the horror tag, so I am guessing it qualifies. But yeah, so there's an option for you as well if you have this sitting on your shelf. Okay, so the next ones I'm going to have to insert an image here. I'm going to pull the first one up on Goodreads because these next ones are ebooks that I have or I'm willing to get. But yeah, or I can go and buy the physical book. Some of them anyway, some of them I will if I can. Okay, so this one I'm going to talk about. I do have an ebook copy of, and that is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I know this was really popular on BookTube a bit ago, but hey, it's my favorite creature, so of course I bought it. So vampires. Okay, so it says, fried green tomatoes and steel magnolias meet Dracula in this southern-flavored supernatural thriller set in the 90s about a woman's book club that must protect its suburban community from a mysterious and handsome stranger who turns out to be a blood-sucking fiend. Patricia Campbell had always planned for a big life, but after giving up her career as a nurse to marry an ambitious doctor and become a mother, Patricia's life has never felt smaller. The days are long, her kids are ungrateful, her husband is distant, and her to-do list is never really done. The one thing she has to look forward to is her book club, a group of Charleston mothers united only in their love for true crime and suspenseful fiction. In these meetings, they're more likely to discuss FBI's recent siege of Waco as much as the ups and downs of marriage and motherhood. But when an artistic and sensitive stranger moves into the neighborhood, the book club's meetings turn into speculation about the newcomer. Patricia is initially attracted to him, but when some local children go missing, she starts to suspect the newcomer is involved. She begins her own investigation, assuming that he's a Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy. What she uncovers is far more terrifying, and soon she and her book club are the only people standing between the monster they've invited into their homes and their unsuspecting community. I did start this a while ago, but I put it down because I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. I was not in the mood to read any ebook, which is interesting. I do like reading ebooks, but sometimes I have to be more in the mood to read an ebook because I would much rather read a physical book. The thing with a physical book for me is it's very sensorily pleasing. You have the smell of the pages, you have the feel of the book, the texture of the pages, the words, the different fonts. I don't know. For me, it's more sensorily pleasing, usually, to read the physical book compared to an ebook. So I would much rather read the physical book. So I do have to be in the mood for an ebook typically. So I was not in the mood, so I DNF'd it just a couple of chapters in, to the point where that new guy was in, but that's pretty much about it. It was a scene at the beginning that was kind of disturbing. I do remember that. So I am prepared to go into that, so do be aware there is a disturbing scene at the beginning of it. Do I remember what the scene was? No. So, I don't know, but I do remember being kind of ickied out, if that makes sense. So yeah, okay, so the next video that I want to talk about is a kind of like a prequel. It's novella number 0.5 in a series written by Mira Grant. It's the Rolling in the Deep series, and that is actually the title of the book, which is Rolling in the Deep. This is classified as a horror fantasy Sci-fi horror is the first classification for this on Goodreads. It is a short story because it is a novella. So this is something that you can definitely include in this. So let me read the synopsis. And I think it said it's either a mermaid or a siren. So I'm going to read the synopsis. I think it's mermaid. It says, let's see. When the Imagine Network commissioned a documentary on mermaids to be filmed from the cruise ship Atargatis, I don't know, they expected what they had always received before, an assortment of eyewitnesses reports that proved nothing, some footage that proved even less, and the kind of ratings that only came from peddling imaginary creatures into the masses. They didn't expect actual mermaids. They certainly didn't expect those mermaids to have teeth. This is the story of the Atargatis, lost at sea with all hands. Some have called it a hoax, others have called it a maritime tragedy. Whatever the truth may be, it will only be found below the bathypelagic zone in the Marina Trench, and the depths are very good at keeping secrets. So to me it sounds like the reason why this would qualify is because it is a supernatural being or creature, and definitely classified as a horror, because to me it sounds like these are possibly vicious mermaids. So I don't know. So there's a short story that you can try, and hey, it's a novella. You can try and see if you like the writing of Mira Grant. I do, because I do like the Newsflash series, and so I am very likely to pick this up at some point. I'll try and pick it up during the month of May, but I don't know if it'll be the one that I want to actually read. All right, so the next book is called Siren by John Everson. This cover looks like a mermaid coming on land, possibly turning into a human, but an evil being is what it looks like. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the synopsis. So it says, Evan is entranced by the alluring sound of the beautiful naked women he saw, or the naked woman he saw in the surf one lonely night. But this is no mere seductress. She is a siren, one of the legendary sea creatures who prey on unsuspecting men, and she has claimed Evan as her next lover. Night after night, Evan walked alongside the desolate beach, grieving over the loss of his son, drowned in an accident more than a year before. Then one night, he was drawn to the luminous sound of a beautiful naked woman singing near the shore in the moonlight. He watched, memorized, as the mysterious woman disappeared into the sea. Driven by desire and temptation, Evan returned to the spot every night until he found her again. Now he has begun a bizarre, otherworldly affair, a deadly affair, for Evan will soon realize that his seductive lover is a being far more evil and more terrifying than he ever imagined. He will learn the danger of falling into the clutches of the siren. So there's another option for you. Okay, this next book is part of a series called Dead World, and there are 4 primary works. So I'm only going to be talking about the first book in the series, and then there'll either be an image over here or over here for all of these. I don't know which side it's going to go on, but you'll have obviously seen them from the previous ones. Okay, so the first book in the Dead World series is called Dead City, and this is by Joe McKinney, and I gotta tell you, this cover looks real creepy, like massively. So this one is classified as post-apocalyptic, well, horror, post-apocalyptic zombies. So there's your creature right there. Okay. After the Gulf Coast is battered by 3 tremendous hurricanes, a deadly virus breaks out, turning the infected into mindless, bloodthirsty zombies. Within hours, the plague has spread throughout most of Texas and shows no signs of slowing down. San Antonio police officer Eddie Hudson finds himself in the middle of the outbreak, along with a few other survivors. Eddie does his best to fight off the zombie horde and locate his wife and son, who he believes are still safe and haven't been infected by the virus. This one I think will kind of be creepy or horrifying on a different level, especially when we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic and that virus. So it might hit a little close to home for some people, so that's something to be aware of. I really don't care. I'm fine with, at least I say that now, with books having some sort of virus or plagues. I guess it'll depend on how it's written. So, okay, so there was that one. Okay, this next one I am particularly intrigued about. It seems like this would be part of a series, but there's only 2 primary works out. You have the actual book, and then you have kind of like a companion to an abridged edition. So I think it's more of a standalone at this point. And that book is also about zombies, and it's World War Z. It says an oral history of the zombie war. Now, when I originally saw this title, I thought this was like a nonfiction book. So the title where it says an oral history of the zombie war, and I'm like, but that didn't really happen, so something's going on here. Now for this one, I'm not going to read the whole synopsis because it's actually fairly long, so I'm just going to read a little snippet here. Okay, and it says the zombie war came unthinkably close to eradicating humanity. Max Brooks, driven by the urgency of persevering the acid-etched first-hand experiences of the survivors from those apocalyptic years, traveled across the United States of America and throughout the world, from decimated cities that once teemed with upwards of 30 million souls, to the most remote and inhospitable areas of the planet. He recorded the testimony of men, women, and sometimes children who came face to face with the living, or at least the undead, hell of that dreadful time. World War Z is the result. Never before had we had access to a document that so powerfully conveys the depth of fear and horror, and also the ineradicable spirit of resistance that gripped human society through the plague years. So that's all I'm going to read for that one, because it just goes on for a bit. So it kind of sounds like this is going to be in the first person perspective of almost, even though it's fiction, almost in the act like it's going to be a nonfiction, but really it's a fiction. I think that'll be interesting, and I'm definitely intrigued by that. But World War Z is definitely an option, especially if you want to read a book about zombies. Okay, so this next one, I particularly like the last name of the author, because the last name of the author is Maberry, and it makes me think of the city of Maberry in Andy Griffith. So I like that, but we're talking horror here. So this particular title is called Rot and Ruin, and that is also the name of the series. So it's Rot and Ruin, and it looks like there's 5 primary works. It does look like there is a novella before this first book, which is 0.5. And it looks like there's also some other novellas. There's also a 1.5, a 2.5. So there are definitely some novellas in this series as well. I'm just going with book number 1, not the 0.5, but book number 1. I think this one's also a zombie one. Jonathan Maberry is the author. I know I said Maberry, but I don't know if I said Jonathan Maberry. I'm looking at the cover, and it's just like got this one eye and it's green, and the face is gray, like very ashen. So I'm thinking this is like a zombie one. I looked at several of these, but okay, let's go ahead and read the synopsis. This one is actually fairly short, and yes, it is zombie. It says, in the zombie-infested post-apocalyptic America where Benny Imura lives, every teenager must find a job by the time they turn 15 or get their rations cut in half. Benny doesn't want to apprentice as a zombie hunter with his boring older brother Tom, but he has no choice. He expects a tedious job whacking zombies for cash, but what he gets is a vacation that will teach him what it means to be human. So what this is, if you don't want to read, I mean, this is horror, but if adult horror seems like it'll be too intimidating and scary for you, this one is considered a young adult horror. So I don't think it's going to be as horrific of a reading experience as an adult read might be. So that's possibly definitely a place to start out. It is also classified as dystopia or post-apocalyptic, which I absolutely love those as well, but definitely zombies, and it is a horror read. So that's, again, if going into adult horror like Stephen King or something like that is intimidating to you, I would definitely recommend starting off with like a middle grade horror or young adult horror, because it's definitely not going to be as intense as an adult book, usually. So, okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so it seems like most of these ones that I'm mentioning are part of a series. So the series is called As the World Dies, and there are 5 primary works in this series. The last one came out, just recently. March 24th of 2022 is when the 5th book came out. I don't know if there's going to be any more. There's no indication on Goodreads, but where it was, the 5th book was just recent released, it'll probably be a little bit. So, The First Days is the name of the first book in the World series, again, in this series, As the World Dies. The cover, looking at it, looks pretty kind of creepy. I can't tell if those are twins or not that are on the cover, but I don't know. Anyway, okay. Synopsis. This one is a little bit longer, but definitely not as long as the one for World War Z. It's like half the length of that one. So let's go ahead and get into this synopsis. So it says, Katie is driving to work one beautiful day when a dead man jumps into her car and tries to eat her. The same morning, Jenny opens a bedroom door to find her husband devouring their toddler son. Okay. That's sad. Fate puts Jenny and Katie, total strangers, together in a pickup, fleeing the suddenly zombie-filled streets of the Texas city in which they live. Why is it Texas? There's 2 books now. This is the second one that's based in Texas. What's with Texas? Okay. Before the sun has set, they have become more than just friends and allies. They are bonded as tightly as any 2 people who have been to war together. During their cross-Texas odyssey to find and rescue Jenny's oldest son, Jenny discovers the joy of watching a zombie's head explode when she shoots its brains out. Katie learns that she's a terrific tactician and a pretty good shot. A chance encounter puts them on the road to an isolated, fortified town besieged by zombies, with fewer than 100 people clinging to the shreds of civilization. It looks like the end of the world, but Katie and Jenny and many others will do whatever they have to stay alive. Run, fight, pick each other up when they stumble, fall in love. Anything is possible at the end of the world. So the man devouring his toddler son is definitely probably going to be very hard to read. Hopefully it's not too graphic, but hey, it is a horror book, and this is an adult fiction, so do bear that in mind, but to me it does sound like a pretty good read. Okay, so this next one I'm going to mention is called The Passage, and this is part of the Passage series, and it looks like there are 3 primary works. Let me just scroll down, yeah, because the other books that it's showing are in a different language. So The Passage is the series and the name of the book. This was written by Justin Cronin. I must admit, I do like the cover of this book. It does not look terrifying. I don't know, it's like trees and stars, and I don't know, it just gives kind of a peaceful vibe, so I bet that is, what's the word I'm looking for, where something is shown and it might be one thing, but then it's actually something else. Deceiving. It looks deceiving, I bet. Okay. It says, it happened fast. 32 minutes for one world to die, another to be born. First, the unthinkable. A security breach at a secret U.S. government facility unleashes the monstrous product of a chilling military experiment. Then, the unspeakable. A night of chaos and carnage gives way to sunrise on a nation and ultimately a world forever altered. All that remains for the stunned survivors is the long fight ahead and a future ruled by fear, of darkness, of death, of fate far worse. As civilization swiftly crumbles into a primal landscape of predators and prey, Two people flee in search of sanctuary. FBI agent Brad Woolgast is a good man haunted by what he's done in the line of duty. 6-year-old orphan Amy Harper Belafonte is a refugee from a doomed scientific project that has triggered apocalypse. Woolgast is determined to protect her from the horror set loose by her captors. But for Amy, escaping the bloody fallout is only the beginning of a much longer odyssey, spanning miles and decades towards the time and place where she must finish what should have never begun. With the passage, okay, and then it kind of goes into more award winning. So I'm not, to me, the reason why I have this for this week is it just, especially for the line, that it's like something was unleashed, and where is it? The predators and prey. So it mentions predators, and then with looking at the, okay, and this is the other reason why I have that on here, is because one of the tags for the passage does say vampires. So it's a horror, it mentions sci-fi, post-apocalyptic fantasy, but it does have vampires as one of the tags on Goodreads, so that's why I'm including it here, as there probably are vampires in this book, and so those would be a supernatural creature. I just don't know how prevalent they are going to be, but that's definitely an option. Now this next one I actually own as an ebook. I won this from Goodreads, and I put it off because the cover is very kind of horrifying to me. It's very creepy and unsettling. It is called Nothing But Blackened Teeth, and this is by Cassandra Khaw. So I do have that on here. It says it's a horror, ghosts, so there's your supernatural, short stories. So this would be a good one to read because it's short stories, and so you can definitely get through things a little bit quicker. And it's based from Japan. I don't know who... It just says Japan, but I don't know if it's translated or not. It doesn't list a translator. But again, this is by Cassandra Khaw, and Nothing But Blackened Teeth, and the cover is hecka creepy. So this one says, let's see, creepy haunted house tales steeped in Japanese folklore and full of devastating twists. A mansion stands abandoned. There is a word before a mansion, but I don't know what the heck it says. So a mansion stands abandoned, its foundations resting on the bones of a bride and its walls packed with the remains of the girl's sacrifice to keep her company. It's the perfect wedding venue for a group of thrill-seeking friends, but a night of food, drinks, and games quickly spirals into a nightmare, for lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart. And she gets lonely down there in the dirt. Yeah, I think that one's going to be kind of freaky, so I'm not sure if I'm ready for that level of scariness myself, so I may put that one off for a little bit, but that's definitely an option as well. Okay, so this next one is Cycle of the Werewolf. It says that an illustrator is Bernie Wrightson. So Werewolf definitely qualifies. I'm wondering, this is listed as a graphic novel, so that would be short stories and graphic novel. So there's another kind of quick way and a way to kind of dip your toes into the horror genre. So this might be a good place to start. I can't personally recommend it because I've never read it, but this is definitely something that I would consider checking out as to look into this. So I may, and I do have it marked as want to read, so I may want to check this out at some point. It says, the first scream came from the snowbound railwayman who felt the fangs ripping at his throat. The next month, there was a scream of ecstatic agony from the woman attacked in her snug bedroom. Now scenes of unbelieving horror come each time the full moon shines on the isolated Maine town of Tarker Mills. No one knows who will be attacked next, but one thing is sure. When the moon grows fat, a paralyzing fear sweeps through Tarker Mills, for snarls that sound like human words can be heard whining through the wind, and all around are the footprints of a monster whose hunger cannot be sated. Cycle of the Werewolf. So there you go, there's your supernatural being, which is the werewolf. And again, where it's short stories and a graphic novel, this would probably be a good way to dip your toes into the horror genre if you want to start that route as well. Okay, one more. So this last one I want to mention, it looks like is part of a series, and it looks like there's 6 primary works. And I do have this one as marked to read, but I do get the heebie-jeebies and the chills going just because I think there is a movie adaptation of this. I am like 99% sure. So, and I remember it was shortly after high school, like the year the movie was released, and I don't remember what year it was. I had this friend come over. She had seen the movie and she really wanted me to see it, and I had nightmares for a couple of days, if not over a week, after watching that movie. It was very unsettling. Oh, but hey, I want to read the book. So I think this book will be very horrifying and unsettling. I know I am definitely not ready to read this book. And I just keep getting chills thinking about the movie. It was very terrifying to me and unsettling. But so the book, so the title of the first book in the series is the same. So there are 6 primary works in this, and the author is Koji Suzuki. And it looks like there are 2 translators, Robert B. Romer and Glenn Whaley. But Koji Suzuki is the author of this. And the title is Ring. So if you've seen the movie The Ring, I'm wondering, I bet that's the adaptation of this book. And you'll know from this synopsis. And the reason why I'm including this is because it's a supernatural being of the ghost that's haunting people and killing people. So there's your supernatural being, and this movie just really unsettles me. But I want to read the book. I really do. At some point I'll have the courage to do so. Maybe. Okay, so the synopsis. A mysterious videotape warns that the viewer will die in 1 week unless a certain unspecified act is performed. Exactly 1 week after watching the tape, 4 teenagers die, one after another, of heart failure. Asakawa, a hard-working journalist, is intrigued by his niece's inexplicable death. His investigation leads him from a metropolitan Tokyo teeming with modern society's fears to a rural Japan, a mountain resort, a volcanic island, and a countryside clinic, haunted by the past. His attempt to solve the tape's mystery before it's too late, for everyone, assumes an increasingly deadly urgency. Ring is a chillingly told horror story, a masterfully suspenseful mystery, and postmodern trip. Okay. Yeah, so definitely has the adaptation of The Ring, and I think there's a sequel, and I have not. Have I seen the sequel? Maybe I have. I think I have seen the sequel, but it's more forgettable definitely than the first one, because the first one was so terrifying to me and unsettling. So I don't really remember much of the sequel, but I'm pretty sure there's a sequel to the movie, to the first Ring movie. But yeah, eventually I want to read the book, because generally, and usually I like the books better than the movie. There are a few cases where the movie is better than the book, but this is one where I want to kind of see, and I'm pretty sure that the book will be more terrifying, because, well, I don't know, because sometimes the movies are more terrifying because they have the music to kind of help build the suspense. So definitely let me know your thoughts on that. If you're reading a horror book and then there's a movie that's adapted from the book, do you find the movie more horrifying or the book more horrifying and suspenseful? So definitely let me know your thoughts on that. Now, this is going to be a long enough video, so let's just get into, just again, reiterating, these are just possibilities. Maybe it can help point you to a certain author or a certain book, or kind of give you some ideas of what you can read. But out of all of these, there is one book that I am going to read for the first week of Horror Mayhem. And the book that I will be reading for Horror Mayhem for the theme of supernatural beings and creatures is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. So I'm excited to finally get to this. Again, I've never read anything by Anne Rice, so this will be definitely like a debut author, obviously, for me. But I don't know, I'm definitely intrigued, especially where I like vampires. I'm not surprised I haven't picked it up sooner, because a lot of people have said avoid Anne Rice and just avoid horror in general, but I'm just finally at the point in my life where it's like, I'll read whatever the heck I want. So yeah, so I'm going to read this, and hopefully I'll like it enough to continue the series, but we shall see. But I definitely hope to really like it because, again, vampires, my favorite supernatural beings. So that'll be it. Let me know if you do know what you're going to read. If you're participating in Horror Mayhem, let me know what you are going to be reading or you're excited to read for the first week of Horror Mayhem. So until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.